What's that say? Network error occurred. It did this last time, didn't it? Yeah. So what happened was it was still left up thinking it was talking, and I came in and told it to talk, and it talked, and now it doesn't talk anymore. Are y'all seeing anything yet? No. So if all else fails, reboot. So the past couple of months we've been talking about raising children, raising godly children. And this week we're going to be talking about teenagers. Last week we talked about children and specifically worship type things that we do with our young children. This week when we talk about teenagers, we're going to talk a little more broad. Because at some point in time you're preparing those teenagers to leave the house. And we want them to be prepared to leave the house. Anything coming up? Oh. Give it a minute. There we go. So if those teenagers be prepared to leave the house, they're no longer going to be home. And this morning, we're going to talk about teenagers. I can't start because the very first thing is about what we're going to talk about. Are we ready? Not yet. There we go. I'll learn this system and then I won't be involved with it anymore. Raising teenagers. When Gina and I were raising our two kids, and the idea of raising teenagers comes to mind, I had a plan. My plan was to build a cage, 10 by 10 by 10. You put them in there, 7, 8 years later, you turn them out. I was a terrible teenager. So I had an expectation of what raising a teenager was going to be like because I was not very good. I was a typical teenager. And as parents, sometimes we don't want to deal with teenager issues. But we have to handle those. And it's easy if you can put them in a box somewhere away from society, away from peers, away from all those things that now are catching their eyes that weren't catching their eyes when they were nice, innocent little children. Now you got teenagers on your hands. Public service announcement. I don't know if you remember, but starting back in 1961, I had to look that up by the way, through the late 1980s, you saw this. Well, you heard this. It's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? As a society, sometime back in the 60s, children in the big cities were spending more and more time out in mischief. And so as a way for society to control what the parents weren't doing, is they issued a curfew. And kids were supposed to be in 10 o'clock at night. If not, a policeman is going to stop you. You either get a citation, they'll help you get home, or if you're creating some sort of mischief, you might get carried to jail. And what we had was a generation of parents who now are letting their children run free. As society changed from an agricultural based to an industrial based. Industrial means everybody came to the cities. And now you got a bunch of teenagers in a very small spot, geographically. And what's going to happen? Trouble. Mischief. Just kids doing things that kids need to be able to do. And you put them in a real small spot and really bad things happen. Because of why? Why would you think that would happen?
Peer pressure.
Peer pressure. There you go. She's already got 100 for the day. So y'all need to be on your toes because I give out A's pretty quick. Peer pressure. And so it kind of feeds on itself, doesn't it? It just sits there and feeds and feeds and feeds. So this morning we want to talk about teenagers. I sent out a message and I don't even remember what I sent. I think I sent 3 passages this morning. And we're going to look at those passages here as we begin. Proverbs 22:6. We probably mentioned this nearly every single time we've had these classes. This is class number 9, I believe. 10, 11, 12, 13. Yep. Class 9. Train up a child in the way he should go, and even when he is old, he will not depart from it. And now it means a little something different than when we started because we're talking about teenagers. You know, we were talking about little kids and how we're handling that and this and this and this, and now all of a sudden we got big teenagers. Issues that come about because of teenagers that are completely different than whenever we have small children. The other passage, Deuteronomy 6:6. These words which I command you today shall be on your heart, and you shall teach them diligently to your sons, and they shall talk of them, when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, when you rise up. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets on your forehead. You shall write them on your doorposts of your house and on your gates. So this morning we want to talk about 3 different things. What is it that we need to do as raising children? Yep. General principles for rearing children. Then we're going to talk about some challenges for raising teenagers. And then we're going to talk about parents once again. You know, we talk about this parenting class, and I don't know if when you think about that, you're going to be talking about kids, but we have talked about us as parents, where we need to be as parents. And we're going to continue that this morning. But before we begin much further, let's have a word of prayer to start our class. Our Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the day. We're thankful for the sunshine that you bring our way. Father, for the smiling faces of each of our brothers and sisters as we come out to worship you. Father, help us to have the proper mind, proper heart, that we come before you, Father, and worship later this morning. This morning, Father, as we open up your word to study from it, may we find truth that is within your word, apply it into our lives, share it. And Father, as we think about our role as parents of raising teenagers, may we always look to your word, and Father, may we come to you in prayer asking for guidance. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray this morning. Amen. General principles about rearing children. Some of these may be duplicated of things that we've talked about in the past, and that would be understandable. But I think as we change from the idea of small children to some of those who may be a little older, to teenagers, that aspect may change just a little bit. First one, train a child in the way he should go. I think we asked this question, and we have some visitors here. Good to see y'all this morning. We have some, we asked the question, this passage here, is that an absolute or was that a target? It was a target, was it not? No guarantee that if we raise a child in the admonition of the Lord, that they're going to follow that. They are free moral agents. They get to make decisions on their own. And that's a very solemn way to put that. Because we want to. Our goal is, our desire is, our ambition every day is to raise them up as godly children. But there is an aspect to them we have no control of. And that's, they are a free moral agent. They get to make a choice. And so we lay the groundwork from before they're born and even after they leave the home of encouraging them to remain godly. There are so many forces outside of the home, outside of the church, that are tugging on our children all the time, unrelenting. And we try to outguess those so we have them prepared. That they have the tools in hand to be able to defeat the devil. Those evil principalities that we're waging war with every day. We're still waging war, and we're not, and most of y'all are just a few years past teenagers. But even those of us who may be a little further past teenagers, we still wage that war every day. You don't reach 50, and it's kind of like Social Security. Now you're free, right? Is there anything free about Social Security, by the way? It's not, is it? It's a misconcept. And so it's a misconcept if you think you hit 50 and all of a sudden all your troubles go away. It doesn't happen that way. Train a child in the way you should go. Bring up children in the training and admonition of the Lord. So not only do we train a child, but that goal is in the Lord. And we've talked about this numerous times. Ephesians 6, 1 through 4. The admonition of the Lord is putting God first. We talked about moms, the opportunity they have once those child are in your arms, exposing them to God. They don't pick up every word you say. I can't remember every word I said this morning when I go home, and I'm the one that said it. And you expect everybody else to remember every single word. It doesn't work that way. But what we do is every day we keep that in front of them. We express to them the love of God that we have, that they can love God. And we develop that, training them according to God's plan. Sometimes that requires some sort of discipline too. God disciplines us. We talked about that last week. Same thing. We have to discipline our children. Bring them back into alignment. We just read Deuteronomy 6, 6 through 9. And I underlined the two words, diligently teach. What does that mean now when you're talking about a teenager? When you're thinking about a teenager, and you just read that passage, not little kids, talking about teenagers, what does that mean to you now? Diligently teach. You've been doing it for a decade. Maybe a decade and a half. Think about it. 10 to 15 years you've been doing this. Is it now time to stop?
Yes.
Definitely not. It's time to apply full pressure. Continually keeping it in front of them and teaching them. Don't turn it over to the church. It's important that we bring our kids to church, don't get me wrong. By all means. It's still the parents' responsibility to teach them. Diligently teach them. How much time do you have now with your teenage kids than when you had with your little kids? 50-50? 100%? 90-10? As they get older, the amount of time we spend with our teenage kids drops. Because there are other things that are of interest to them. They have friends. Maybe they want to go to the mall. Maybe they want to take the car and they drive to the library so they can study on their homework. Y'all did that, right? There are things that get in the way, and so their amount of time they want to spend with mom and dad drops. There are other people in this world, and they want to spend some time with them. Teach children to fear God. I think this is one of the very first ones, and Jen, there we go, had Willem in the line. Jen, who's teaching class, brought up the fact not only do we need to teach our kids, but we need to teach them to love God, to fear God, and that there are responsibilities for sinning against God. We need to teach them that. Deuteronomy 4:10. Children need restraint. Remember, we drew the box. They're looking for the boundaries. We have to give them boundaries. And even as they're teenagers, what are they doing? Just as they were when they were 1 year old, 6 months old. They're pushing to find the boundary. And they need just a little more. Mom, just a little more. Dad, just a little more. I don't want them to be in at 8 o'clock at night. How about 8:30? Can we get to 8:30? 8:30. How about 9:30, 10? What's wrong with midnight? I said 10, and if you're not in at 10, there's going to be consequences. Oh, Mom, everybody else, it's 10, period, stop. And they got to have restraint. You just bring them in and provide them those boundaries. There are other boundaries besides showing up for work, getting home, maybe boundaries of who their friends are. We have other boundaries, maybe if they're going to drive the vehicle. Yeah, there are some of y'all in here who are fixing to have kids who are driving. Let me know so I can park my car at home. Why are y'all laughing? We laugh because there's a growing phase, is there not? And at some point in time, around 60-ish, you start becoming a kid again in your driving habits, by the way. You don't look behind you near as much because it's not as easy to look behind you whenever you're a little older than whenever you were younger. Children need restraint. I want to read this passage, 1 Samuel chapter 2. If y'all take your Bibles and we'll turn there. I did not put it on the board, so I'm going to ask for 5 readers. We're going to read through this passage. The context we have here is there's a priest. He's the high priest, Eli. Eli is of the tribe of... Anybody help me? Levi. She gets 50 points. Because I'm going to ask her to answer another question and give her 100 points. Tribe of Levi of what people? The Israelites. All right. So, y'all remember God came to them at Mount Sinai. He separated them out of Egypt, brought them over, annihilated the Egyptian army, brought them to Mount Sinai, instituted a religious, a civil law, religious law. All those things were brought to these people, and part of that was the Levitical priesthood. And there was a high priest. At this point in time, Eli is the high priest. He has 2 sons.
Phineas and Hophni.
What's that?
Phineas and Hophni.
Phineas and Hophni. All right. And they were not very good characters. So as we read through this story, I want y'all to think about what it was as these boys, who are probably now no longer teenagers, what the problems were, so we could talk about that in this following passage. So, David Cooper, if you can read for us 1 Samuel chapter 2, verses 12 through 17.
the sons of Eli were corrupt. They did not know the Lord, and the priest's custom with the people was that when any man offered a sacrifice, the priest's servant would come with a three-pronged flesh hook in his hand while the meat was boiling. Then he would thrust it into the pan or kettle or cauldron or pot, and the priest would take for himself all that the flesh hook brought up, so that they did in Shiloh to all the Israelites who came there. Also, for they burned the fat, and the priest's servant would come and say to the man who sacrificed, "Give meat for roasting to the priest, for he will not take the boiled meat from you, but raw." And if the man said to him, "They should really burn the fat first, then you may take as much as your heart desires," he would then answer him, "No, but you must give it now, and if not, I will take it by force." Therefore the sin of the young men was very great before the Lord, for men abhorred the offering of the Lord.
Thank you. Charles Majors, if you'll read chapter 2, verses 22 through 28.
Now Eli was very old, and he kept hearing all that his sons were doing to all Israel, and how they lay with the women who were serving at the entrance of the tent of the meeting. And he said to them, "Why do you do such things? For I hear of your evil dealings from all of you. No, my sons, it is no good report that I hear the people of the Lord spreading abroad. If someone sins against a man, God will mediate for him. But if someone sins against the Lord, who can intercede for him?" But they would not listen to the voice of the Father, for it was the will of the Lord to put them to death. Now the boy Samuel continued to grow in stature and in favor with the Lord and also with men. And there came a man of God, Eli, and he said to him, "Thus says the Lord, did I indeed reveal myself to the house of your father when they were in Egypt, subject to the house of Pharaoh? Did I choose him out of all the tribes of Israel to be my priest, to go up to the altar, to burn incense, to wear an ephod before me? I gave them to the house of your father all my offerings by fire from the people of Israel."
Okay. Peyton, will you read 29 through the end of the chapter, verse 36?
Why then do you scorn my sacrifices and my offerings that I commanded for my dwelling, and honor your sons above me by fattening yourselves on the choicest parts of every offering of my people Israel? Therefore the Lord, the God of Israel, declares, I promised that your house and the house of your father should go in and out before me forever. But now the Lord declares, far be it from me, those who honor me I will honor, and those who despise me shall be lightly esteemed. Behold, the days are coming when I will cut off your strength and the strength of your father's house, so that there will not be an old man in your house. Then in distress you will look with envious eye on all the prosperity that shall be bestowed on Israel, and there shall not be an old man in your house forever. The only one of you whom I shall not cut off from my altar shall be spared to weep his eyes out, to grieve his heart. And all the descendants of your house shall die by the sword of men. And this that shall come upon your two sons, Hophni and Phinehas, shall be a sign to you. Both of them shall die on the same day. And I will raise up for myself a faithful priest, who shall do according to what is in my heart and in my mind. And I will build him a sure house, and he shall go in and out before my anointed forever. And everyone who is left in your house shall come to implore him for a piece of silver or a loaf of bread, and shall say, please put me in one of the priest's places, that I may eat a morsel of bread.
Thank you. Jeremy, will you read chapter 3, verse 1 through 7?
Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord in the presence of Eli, and the word of the Lord was rare in those days. There was no frequent vision. At that time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim, so that he could not see, was lying down in his own place. The Lamb of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called Samuel and said, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But he said, "I did not call. Lie down again." So he went and lay down. And the Lord called again, "Samuel." And Samuel arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." And he said, "I did not call, my son. Lie down again." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him.
Okay. Keith, if you'll read 8 through 15.
And the Lord called Samuel again the third time, and he arose and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the young man. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant hears.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. And the Lord came and stood, calling as at other times, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant hears." Then the Lord said to Samuel, "Behold, I am about to do a thing in Israel at which the 2 ears of everyone who hears it will tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house, from beginning to end. And I declare to him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be atoned for by the sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord, and Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli.
All right. Thank y'all for reading this morning. Do y'all see any problems in this particular household of Eli, Hophni, and Phinehas?
He didn't rebuke them.
What's that?
He didn't rebuke them.
He didn't discipline his children, did he? Didn't rebuke them, as the passage said. What else? Yes, Jeremy.
Well, there's a kind of an irony. At one point, Eli says, "If you sin against the Lord, there's no one to intercede for you." That was his very purpose. He was the high priest. If anyone was going to intercede between the man who sinned against God, it would have been the high priest. It's just shocking.
Yeah. It appears that Eli didn't know God very well either. What else? Well, in contrast, what do we hear about Samuel?
He was obedient to the Lord.
Hmm?
He was obedient to the Lord.
He was obedient to the Lord. It did say in that passage that he did not know the Lord yet. He had not heard the Lord. And he's living in the household of Eli.
So Eli was not doing what he was supposed to do, even with Samuel.
The parent wasn't doing what he was supposed to do, right? It said also that the 2 sons did not know the Lord. They didn't understand the sacrifices. They were abusing the people. They were, what did the very first verse that we read call them? What?
Correct.
Hmm?
They were corrupt.
They were corrupt. They were roughhousers. They threatened people. You take your sacrifice to bring it to God, and you're being threatened. They were laying with the women. These were just bad kids. All right. Preparing for teen years. That's the important part of this. Don't start when they're 20, 25 years old. Got to start before they're teenagers. Number 1, get behavior under control early. We all know that. We all shake our head. Is it easy? No. But it's something we have to do, is it not? Children, they come in all different kinds of mannerisms. Andy, you could look at him and he would melt. Anna was more like her mom, a little headstrong. We all talk about that, don't we? Though we try to put them after one of the parents. No, Anna was probably more like her dad. Loved math. But they have personalities. And yet we have to help them to control their personalities. Not only do we have to help control them, they learn to control it themselves. That's the end game, is them being able to control themselves. These two boys, Phineas and Hophni, I can't pronounce it. You know the two. They had no self-constraint. No self-restraint, period. They didn't learn that. Get behavior under control early. Number 2, teach them to respect others. Did these two boys have any respect for anybody? Did they have respect for God? Their dad? The people in the community? The ladies who were working up at... No. Nobody. We have to teach them what? To respect other people. And we talked about this last week a little bit. But now as they're leaving the house more, they're no longer with mom and dad 24/7, or maybe mom at least. And they're venturing out. They have to learn to respect other people. There are teachers. There are your neighbors. There's your grandparents, your own parents. They need to learn to respect those police officers. Unfortunately, as a society, our parents in general are not teaching kids to respect law enforcement. You may not agree with everything about them. You may not agree with having boundaries and restraint, but that's what we need as a society. We talk about the street signs out there, the stop sign. It's not a suggestion, folks. It's a command. You come up to it and you come to a stop. Gina and I last night witnessed the guy completely missed the whole stop sign. We would have been doing 70 miles an hour and he was doing 55. There was not enough reaction time with where the building was. It was a house and there was a business right next to it. For either one of us to be able to decelerate significant from somebody not getting hurt. They flew through there and hit a gravel road and come to a stop and decided they needed to back up. They just completely missed the whole intersection. Those things are there for a purpose. We need to learn to respect others. Don't teach or allow things that you must correct or change later. It might have been Eli's philosophy as a father to teach his boys they need to stand up for themselves. Don't let people push you around. But there was no other boundary on the other side of that. And so now they think they can run roughshod over everybody, and that's okay. It might have been kind of cute to see a boy who was pushing on an adult. You know, that's kind of cute. But if you don't stop bad behavior early in life, things might look cute. Don't let them get out of control. Don't encourage things that you're going to have to change later. What he's trying to say here in this passage. Remember that little children grow up. Many times we like to keep our children as children. Time marches on. They grow. They get bigger. They outgrow Dad. My dad is this tall. He weighs 150 pounds. I weigh 180 pounds. We outgrow our parents. All of a sudden, we're not kids anymore. I'm not a 15, 20 pounder, 45 pounder. 3'8". Those days are long gone. Remember, they're going to grow up. Be an example to your children. Was Eli an example to his children? I disagree with every one of y'all. I think he was. He was a bad apple. And his kids learned to be a bad apple because he was a bad apple. It mentioned in that passage that there was times that Eli thought it was okay to reach in and take raw meat that hadn't been sacrificed. Before the sacrifice. Before the proper time, he was already doing some of those improper things. He was a bad example, and his kids followed his bad example. Y'all may disagree, and I wasn't there. I'm not going to judge. I suspect, though, that he wasn't a really good guy, and his kids turned out to be really bad guys because of his good example. We have to be good examples for our kids. We can't expect our kids to see our bad example and want to do good. We have to show them good things. Develop communication. Don't wait till they're 20 years old to start thinking about how you're going to communicate with your teenagers. It starts much earlier, doesn't it? You want your kids to come to you when they have a problem. And shouldn't feel any remorse for coming to you because they trust you. They could tell you anything. You're not going to belittle them. You're not going to tell them how bad they are. You're not going to hold things against them. You want them to confide in you. They need to trust you, and they need to be able to communicate, and you need to be able to communicate with them. To be able to go to them. When you need to get on to them, can you do it like you did a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old? No, they're now nearly an adult, and you have to treat them nearly as an adult. They're still your children. But they need to learn to be able to respectfully communicate. When your dad and your 3-year-old and they did something you need to correct, it's not a time when you sit down and buddy-buddy. Dad has to take control of those situations and teach those lessons. They get to be teenagers. We now have to be able to communicate differently. So, develop communication. Commend and encourage. This is not a class on beating our kids into shape. If you beat your kids into shape, what are they going to look like? A piece of clay that's all been out of shape. That's not what we're trying to do. We want to encourage them. The things that you want them to do is what you want to encourage. When they do something right, they clean their room and mom didn't have to ask them, woohoo, we hit a home run that day. We're so proud of them. When they had the opportunity to go do something wrong and they elected not to because they knew something wrong was going to happen, we encourage them. We tell them how proud we are that they're making good decisions. Lastly, strengthen their independence. They need to become independent. The day we took Andy to College Station, Texas, he left the home. Mom was crying. I looked over and I said, you had him for 18 years. What did you not teach him that you want to teach him now? And we had taught him. Now the separation is very emotional, don't get me wrong, but at some point in time you have to let go. And you have, so now he's got to feed himself. He's got to dress himself. He's got to get up on time. He's got to pay his bills. There's all kinds of things now that they have responsibility. They need to be able to take care of those responsibilities without mom and dad. Don't forget you got to pay your light bill on Thursday. They have to be responsible. So you need to strengthen that. We give them things to do as teenagers. At one point in time back in the 70s, you did not pump your own gas in the state of Texas. Somebody else pumped it for you, right? They checked the oil. They did all those things. sometime in the 70s, fuel prices were getting high. We can cut some labor out. We can drop our prices. So you got to pump your own fuel. We have to teach them independence, taking care of themselves. We have 5 minutes. Cover 2 more slides. Not going to finish. Challenges, though, for teen years. Obeying the gospel. I'll quickly cover this. This is the time when parents aren't applying pressure, but we're providing cues that at some point in time they need to obey the gospel. They become responsible for their sins. And what is it that they need? They've heard all the lessons. They've been through all the storybooks and the stories of things that go wrong, redemption, salvation, all those things. But if we make them become baptized, did we select for them or did they select? They need to select that they want to be baptized because of their sins, and they want to give their life over to God in His ways. They're going to follow Jesus in His steps. That sign that's right over there. Following in His steps. Obeying the gospel. Peer pressure. And friends. It's something that you really don't have when they're young. It develops as teenagers. We have to help them control peer pressure. We have to help them to handle friends. Picking good friends and bad friends. Anybody in here ever had a bad friend? My hand's up. Yeah, I've had bad friends. Yep. It took a while, but you then can clearly see they're going to be a bad person. Is that who you want to call your friend? Is that who you want to be seen in society? No, we begin to look at and we weigh out what is good, what is bad, what we want to, who our friends are going to be, how we're going to associate, what we want other people to look at us like. And we need to be able to pick good friends. Our parents help them pick good friends. Help them set up guidelines, expectations for picking out friends. Dress. Now all of a sudden, society is helping them to decide what is acceptable dress. Who is the dress monitor in your home?
Mother.
Who?
Mother.
Mother? Does anybody else? She got an F, by the way.
Both here.
Okay, I'm telling y'all here. This is Kyle speaking. This is my personal opinion. I'm stepping away from there. I'm the guy sitting in here. Dad, it's your responsibility to set what is acceptable dress. Moms can help their daughters dress. Dad, you've got to step up and say, that's not going to work. Too provocative, too much skin showing, whatever term you want to use. But dads, you're the ones who see from a guy's standpoint. Moms see from a mom's standpoint, guys see from a guy's standpoint. At some point in time, these kids are going to go out and those teenage boys are looking at teenage girls differently, and teenage girls are looking at teenage boys differently than what mom and dad look at. So dad, it's your responsibility to say no. I don't know if y'all looked at For Better or For Worse this week. The young lady put on a corset and there was skin showing above and below. And mom's eyes popped out of her head and dad said, you're not wearing that. Because he understood what teenage boys said. We have to properly dress. Dating. We don't have time to answer this one. But it's going to happen. Only advice I can give to you, it's generally a rule of thumb during dating, somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's feelings are going to get hurt. Somebody's not going to like somebody, and somebody's going to be upset. It's a whole lot better to do that at home than when they're in college, 150, 200, 5 hours away. Help them in their teenage years with the dating. Entertainment. Somebody has to set the restraint, once again, on what is acceptable entertainment. Are you going to allow your kids to see PG-13? Society says it's okay. Maybe a little R movie in there. Y'all going to allow that? Some point in time you have to set the restraints on what that is going to be. What is acceptable? Dancing and prom. Nothing good has ever come out of dancing, by the way. You nip this in the bud. If you are going to say no to prom, no to dancing, you nip this in the bud early. We talked about that already. Don't wait until they're a sophomore or whatever, whenever the prom starts, junior or senior, to start saying no. They should have already made this decision on their own. I'm not going. What happens at proms and dancing parties? Anybody know? Oh, y'all all know. I know. We're adults. We all know. Nothing good comes out of those things. The young men's intentions that those proms are not necessarily holy, wholesome. I said it. I'm on tape, so it's all over the World Wide Web. Y'all know it. Those are challenges. If you don't want to handle this challenge as a sophomore, junior, or senior, handle it when they're 8, 9, and 10. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. College is coming. I use this word college. It's that point in time when they step out of the house. Sometimes they step out of the house at age 18. They're still teenagers. 19, they're still teenagers. But they need to be responsible. But you have to help them. They're tackling face on with seniors, I'll say 40, 50, 60-year-old individuals who may have alternative motives. Who's going to take advantage of them financially? Sell them a car that they can't afford. Sell them a home they can't afford. Charge them for a school book they can't afford. Whatever that may be. They need to be prepared because they're still going out into that world as a teenager. Money. Anybody in here ever had a money problem? Everybody raise your hand. We have, haven't we? But during the teenage years, we get to teach them. What do you teach them about money? What's the first thing? Save money. You got to work for it. It doesn't. Mom and Dad are not going to always have the open checkbook. You work for it. It's yours. What are you going to do with it?
Pay your bills.
What's that?
Pay your bills.
Pay your bills. We need to teach them about money, how to use money, how to save money, what it has a value. And if you buy 50 CDs, in 10 years, there's no CD players left, like I bought cassette tapes. Yeah, y'all, I see some of y'all doing this. We did. There's no cassette player left. Everybody ever bought a VCR tape? Yeah.
About 8-track.
8-track. Yes. We have to teach them that money has value, but be careful how you spend your money. Day in and day out. Anybody ever had to fill up the car? Dad, I need to take the car out. Can you give me $20 so I can go fill it up? If you want to go, you take your $20 and go spend that money. You may not drive near as fast. You may not drive very far when you're footing the bill for that. We teach them those things when they're teenagers. Okay. I'm out of time. I got to stop. We will quickly cover this next week because I think this is important. And I'm sorry I didn't let anybody talk in here this morning. We did have 1 F and 2 A's. Sorry, Mary. Next week I'll let you have an A. I'll give you extra homework. How about that? Anybody have a comment or question? Because I did over talk. If you do, send me a text message or email, and I'll be sure to get those in first thing next week. Thank you very much. I'll leave it up. We bring the charger in here. It was on the truck. Okay.